Good morning, PBS. That was pretty good. That was really good. I'm really impressed. I am so excited to be here today, and I'm going to tell you two reasons why. The first reason is that my mom was an elementary school teacher for 38 years. And for the la- and for the last 7 of those 38 years, she taught kindergarten. And so the only thing that I could ever do in my life that would be important would be to come back to elementary school and talk to the kids. And so we're streaming, Mom, I'm doing it. Okay, the second reason I'm so excited is that when I was in school your age, I went to a Jesuit grade school and I wore a uniform. I wore a nice white collared shirt with a navy pair of pants and a sweater just like you guys. And so when I come to school every morning and bring Christopher and Michael, it reminds me of the time when I had to do that. And now you can see that today I'm wearing a uniform. This is what I wear 3 days a week. Sometimes I wear a shirt and tie 1 day a week. And sometimes I get free dress. There you go. So how many people in the kindergarten class can guess what I do? What do I do? Okay, just shout it out. What do I do? Okay, all right. I am a doctor. That's right. Hold on. And the kind of doctor that I am is a brain doctor. And when people have problems that require surgery on their brain, I try to help them. And that's why Dr. Erickson asked me to come today and talk to you about empathy. Now, one other secret. When I told my colleagues this morning that I needed them to cover for me because I was coming to talk about empathy, do you know what they did? They laughed at me. How many of you guys have ever been laughed at before? That doesn't feel very good, does it? No. I didn't I didn't feel very good either when they laughed at me, but you know what? We're going to talk about empathy, and that's a big word. And it turns out the reason they laughed at me is because if you look at all the doctors in the hospital, the surgeons are probably the ones that have the least amount of empathy. And so they decided that Dr. Erickson had tricked me into coming here to talk to you about that because they knew that it would be really, really hard. And so what do you do when when you have to do something really, really hard? That's right. That's exactly what I did. I stood up, I stuck my chest out and raised my head, and I thought deep down inside that I could do this. And then what do? Let me tell you. You work hard. I went to the library and read up on empathy. Actually, what I did was I went to my office and got online and went to the library. And so that's what we're going to talk about. The first thing I did was looked up the definition, which is what you can see behind me. And this is what Webster says. It says that empathy is the action of understanding, being aware, sensitive to the feelings, thoughts of other people. And said in a different way, it's the ability to understand or share the feelings of other people. It's the ability to put yourselves in someone else's shoes and understand what they're feeling. A part of being human is that we have feelings: happiness, sadness, fear, anger, sorrow, frustration, pain, and sickness. And each of us has experienced those. And it turns out you can look at other people and look at the expressions on their face and know what they're feeling and know how that feels inside of you. And that's the beginning of empathy. So, for instance, all of us are human and we make mistakes. And sometimes we hurt other people with our words and our actions, and sometimes even with not saying things. And that doesn't make people feel very well. And sometimes we get our feelings hurt by being isolated and not being allowed to participate or having people talk about us. And we know what that hurt feels like, so when it happens to someone else, we can now empathize with them. And just like with hurt, sometimes we're afraid of doing things like talking at a big gathering. Sometimes we feel anger. I know. Sometimes we feel frustration and sometimes we feel pain. And we can look at each of the faces that we see there and we know automatically what they're feeling because we felt that before. And that's the beginning of our empathy. Now, how many people besides Christopher and Michael know what this is? Okay, that's right. This is a brain. I'm going to show you something else. This is a MRI scan of a brain, which is a big magnet that allows us to take pictures of the brain without having to actually do something invasive. And the area in green here is a part of the brain that controls things that happen automatically, like our ability to breathe, our heartbeat, our eye movements. And it turns out that if you look at the brains of sharks and lizards and frogs and toads, they have cells in their brain that do the exact same thing as the areas that are shown here in green. And as we've evolved, mammals actually have an area of their brain that's shown here in red that controls pain and feeling and emotions. And mammals are things like monkeys and primates. And it also turns out what makes us different from monkeys and primates is that our brains have developed these other areas that are responsible for our language, our ability to write poetry, our ability to sing songs, do mathematics, and build machines that can go to Mars. Now, it turns out that empathy, just like your ability to walk, is also hardwired in the brain. And some scientists have figured out there's an area called the right supramarginal gyrus that's very important in that. So you all can go home and tell your parents that you know where the right supramarginal gyrus is. And it's important for empathy. But it's not the only area. You know where it is? Okay, all right. Well, she told you a good thing. And actually, it turns out that there's some other areas too. And it turns out that these other areas work with that supramarginal gyrus to basically help us feel and understand empathy. So it also turns out that just like walking and running, which are also hardwired in the brain, everyone doesn't do it the same way. You have to practice. And so in order to practice empathy, you have to be observant. You have to be an active listener. And more importantly, you have to share your feelings with the feelings of those who you're talking to. And that's how empathy starts. And so when you get really good at empathy, it leads to a bunch of other good things like kindness that you see in this slide, and compassion. I know, that's what I was thinking too. There we go. Compassion, helping someone else. And fairness and equality. And the ability to not fight, but sit down and listen to other people and come to a common understanding. And then also the ability to say that you're sorry. These are all things that happen when you practice empathy. And of course, the importance of that is you realize that we're all human beings and that we're not alone and that we're connected. We have friends, family, regardless of the fact that we may look different and have different colors of our skin and believe in different things and be from different parts of the world. We're all connected, and empathy helps connect us. Now, these are the people who inspire me. And last week, when I was putting Michael to sleep, he told me something really inspiring. He said, gratitude makes you live longer. That was pretty cool. 5-year-old telling me gratitude makes you live longer. I said, well, where'd you learn that? It must have been, you know? That's exactly what I thought. I thought it was from PBS. I thought it was from his kindergarten class. But let me tell you, hold on for just 1 second. I said it must have been Mrs. Cook and Miss Wolf. I said, Michael, did they teach you that? And unfortunately, Mrs. Cook and Miss Wolf, he said no. So then I said, it must have been his big brother, Christopher, because Christopher has stepped up his role as a big brother, which really means that my wife taught him. So I said, Michael, did Christopher teach you? And unfortunately, Cindy, he said no. So I said, where did you learn that? And he said, wow in the world. For those of you who don't know, Wow in the World is a podcast by Mindy Thomas and Guy Raz. Michael learned gratitude leads to longevity from Wow in the World. And it got me to thinking about other philosophers who thought a lot about things like that. The Dalai Lama. And you heard the quote that Dr. Erickson gave this morning. And basically, he's also said that compassion leads to happiness, and there's been lots of cognitive science that has suggested that compassion also leads to longevity. And more importantly, empathy is the first starting block of compassion. So as I finish, I want all of you guys to go out and practice your empathy. I want you to use your eyes, E, and be observant. I want you to look at the muscles, M, of people's facial expressions. I want you to look at their posture so you can determine their affect, A, and how they feel. And then I want you to use your ears, hearing, to listen, and T, to the tone of people's voice, so that then you can understand how they feel, and then come back and use Y, your own self, to figure out how you feel or have felt when they have felt that way, and then start a conversation. And that's the way you practice empathy, which leads to compassion, so you guys can be lifelong learners who are courageous, kind, and compassionate. Now, one last thing. I got the hospital to give you an aid in practicing your compassion. It's a little brain to remind you that empathy starts in innate circuits in the brain. I asked him to give me 250 so that everyone could have them, and I got 150. So I'm going to give these to Dr. Erickson, who's going to hand them out to the teachers. They have promised me that in another 3 weeks we'll have another 100. And so Dr. Erickson can practice his empathy in turning out how he's going to distribute them. Thank you.